any new speakers? Thank you for coming. Today's session, we're going to have Dr. Michelle Brent and Dr. Elizabeth Crane, and they're going to be discussing and demonstrating some tools and strategies used to engage online students. First presenter will be Dr. Grant, and she will explain how she uses wikis in her course to promote collaborative group work among her students. Also, she will demonstrate ThingLink, and also she will demonstrate how to engage her students and provide different means of interaction with the course content. So, Dr. Grant.
Thank you.
You just,
All right. Okay. All right. So, yeah, as Nadine said, I'm going to talk about ways that I found that are helpful to interact with students and to get student engagement, increase student engagement. Okay. So we all know that student engagement is key to successful performance, student instruction, and overall learning in a course. And so student engagement really boils down to meaningful and authentic connections that students are making with content, with the instructor, and between and among themselves. Today, I'm going to just talk mostly about the content and among themselves. There have been other tips for, not that instructors aren't important, but there's other tips. And so these are specifically geared toward those two focus points. One way that we traditionally have tried to engage students with content is with PowerPoints. And that's not to say that they're not good. There's a place for them. But I'm just going to make a comparison between PowerPoint and another type of media. So PowerPoints, if you think about it, they're fairly passive. Students, even if you record and present and have that on your online class, it's rather passive. It's a linear presentation of the content, so it goes from one slide to the next. And it really can be useful for some things. It's useful for sequential processing, so you have to understand, theories or something that comes in a certain order. I found, though, that ThingLink is a different way of presenting material. It's an interactive and non-linear presentation of the content and ideas. And so in a way that facilitates a different kind of processing. So it can be that more spatial or simultaneous processing. The benefit of that can be when students go back to review material, then they don't have to go through an entire PowerPoint to figure out the piece or the slide that they didn't understand correctly. They can go directly to a button that will present that piece of the material. So I'm going to show you that in just a second. So I'm going to show you a couple of ThingLinks that I created, a couple that the students created, and then I'm going to show you just how easy it is to create one. But by no means a tutorial, but there are tutorials on the IDC website, I think, for how to do ThingLinks. So this one here, if everything works right, this goes straight to my ThingLink. It's free, a free account, ThingLink presentation. You just take a picture and you add it to the ThingLink webpage, and then you can start to create information based on that picture. So you put these buttons on here. This was, I teach an audiology for teachers class, and I wanted them to understand how the audiometer, the portable audiometer worked. And I could have, I guess, done a video of myself doing all of those things, but then they'd have, like I said, have to rewatch it every time to see what it was. So what I did was just put little buttons here that you can click on, and I recorded what this little band of information was, this little frequency thing. I just gave its explanation on here.
Michelle,
And,
I think it's the full screen.
oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I wondered if that was going to happen.
I had the same problem.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Sorry about that, folks.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad you told me because I'm only seeing my thing. Yeah, there it is. Now can you see?
Oh, it's not.
Let's see. Okay. Now are you there? Okay, so this was a picture of an audiometer that I just got off the internet, but it looked like one, or I think I just took this picture. Yeah, I took the picture and I uploaded it, and so then I went in and I put little buttons here, and then I could tell the students what this particular button represented, and they could go through and just, you can see the buttons pop up, and you can hover over each one. And so for this one, I just did audio recordings of everything that I would have explained in a video that they would have to listen to the whole thing. So that was one use that I had for it. And then in my courses, I had a couple others that I got a little more practice using it. So in my courses, I used, this was another class where I teach about language development, and here we've all heard about Piaget. So I had this whole, this visual that I found about the stages of development, so the sensory motor all the way up. So I had a little introduction here for me that I just recorded through SoundCloud, and then for each one here, I found a video that represented an example of what that level of development looks like, so that they, rather than just reading it in their textbooks, they got actual demonstrations of what that looks like. So I found those to be really beneficial. And then, so then what I had the students do, so that's how they can engage with the content. But then they could also engage with it for themselves, and they created their own ThingLinks. And so this one was a theory of cognitive and language development, and it was called, one of the key terms in learning about it was called bootstrapping. And so the students had to pick their own picture, and so this one group picked bootstrap of these boots, and then they went through and they told you they were assigned to have to have a couple of outside sources. So this was one of the people that promotes this theory, and then they had to just, here they just typed in some stuff to add to it. So they could go back and review it. So this was, they presented it to the class, so everybody got to sort of see this, and then it was available for students to go back and review and study from. It's a little bit more dynamic than, you know, a table full of notes or anything like that. So I found those to be pretty engaging for the students and beneficial. And then, so then I was just going to show you quickly how you could go about creating your own ThingLink. So let's see if I can just get to the ThingLink site. Rebecca, all right, and it should be, I think it'll go to my login. Let's see if I remember my login. I think I do. I hope. Did it say no? Maybe I used my Gmail account. I'm sorry. I should have done this before I got on here. No, that's not working. Okay, forget it then. Well, so let's see. Where's that other one? I'm sorry. I thought I picked everything. Oh, here it is. This is it. But since the it won't, since it's not in that mode. So now I have to. That's it. I got it. I got to highlight it. I knew I had it here. All right. Sorry about that. Threw me when I couldn't do the links from the. All right. There. See, I know I was here. So if you wanted to create your own ThingLink, then you would just, I have a couple pictures in here. You just would go in here, I just Google Maps or something. So all you do is you hover here, you click somewhere. Oops, I did one already there. Hold on. I had started it. It's hard to get back to your stuff here. I'm sorry, I feel silly. Okay, I'll try it again. Oh, it was on the second tab?
Second tab up there. Yeah.
This one? Okay, thank you. So you can make a new tab anywhere you want. You just, Oh, of course, I'm trying to show you. I just did this before I came over here. You click and you make it.
You need to log in though.
I was, I thought. Ah,
Use the mouse. This is not.
oh, I didn't see the mouse here. I didn't see the mouse here. Okay, so hold on. Well, now this is awful. Okay, so I want to create a new tab and it won't let me do
Yeah,
that.
you're not logged in though. Okay.
Log in. Okay, maybe I'm sorry. I thought it was. Okay. Well, this might not work. Let me just tell you, I'm going to waste too much time trying to do it. Usually you just click here and it will give you an option to pick a button from over here, and then you put the button here and you can see what I did. All I did was find a link and put it in over there. It's really easy to use. And there, like I said, there is a video on the EKU website that tells you how to do it. I just don't want to waste anybody's time right here because I thought I had that logged in and or my password saved. And
Did you use a different browser?
I don't know. I used Google for this, but I did it on my computer before I came over here, and so I don't want to keep typing in my password because I'm going to run out of time. So anyway, it's really easy to do. Trust me on that. Trust me on that. And it's really fun. The kids enjoyed how to do it. And then what I did, I can show you one other thing. What you do when you go in to create it is just like some people might have been attended the one yesterday, the thing where they talked about doing the iframe embed. So you can do that from the ThingLink, and then you just go to this little section here and you put the code in here and you can see how that's what we did. And then we started to fix, and I did this, change the size and everything. And so the students, I was able to teach them how to do that. And that, like I said, all those instructions are on the website. So it's very easy for the students to do. And like I said, I think it's it leads to the second kind of part of engagement, which is with other people. So the big thing about online engagement is group work, to do or not to do, right? Because it's like, well, the research says it's great, and it promotes more learning and all of that. But instructors sometimes say, well, you hear the complaints, and then students do the complaining. And so how beneficial is it? So one thing I did have found that for me has worked is, and solved some of those problems, is wikis. So the students, the benefits of it are that I found it to produce authentic experiences that students can reuse for other purposes. So I like them to have a reason to do what they're doing. So in the field of education, there are a couple of things that they need to do just besides get through my class. And some of that is passing their praxis test. But in other fields, there's other licensure types of tests where you just have to know facts. And so I found that creating wikis gives you access to that later to review. And then also, I put workplace activities, and for me, it's like lesson plans. But there are other types of activities that you might need to do in your workplace, and you could adjust those accordingly and set up a wiki. That's a good way to get that interaction going. And the other thing I do after the wiki is that I follow it up with meaningful and engaging discussion board prompts, so that sort of ensures that they're really looking at other people's work. I think the benefit, one of the biggest benefits, is that you can cover a large amount of information more efficiently by using a wiki. So in my audiology class, there's a section where they have to talk about some of the pathologies of the ear, and there was just a ton of them. And they're going to read them, and then they're probably going to forget them after the quiz. And so for them to be able to have that in-depth knowledge all in one place, and those resources, I found to be great. And so what the students can do is they work asynchronously, so you don't have that whole, when are we going to meet? Oh, I can't meet then. I'm not available this date. So you set up the wiki, and you can set up the groups however you choose, and then they can go in and post to the wiki when it's convenient for them. You can track who's submitting or contributing when. You can set up all kinds of things in your rubrics for scoring as to contribution responsibilities, and all of those things. You just score those like you would a regular assignment. I've done it a couple of different ways. So I've done it where students research one aspect of a topic in depth and contribute to a class wiki page, or I've had it where they create their own wikis and then with multiple pages for that. And I was just going to show you an example of each of those kinds. So let's see. This one was, we talk about the components of reading in one of my classes, the reading class. And so there's like 5 components of reading. And so I have these pages set up. I set these up ahead of time. So it's one big wiki, and then these are the different pages that were assigned to different groups. And then the students went to, they filled these pages up. We actually videoed some of them, so we put a video into the wiki. Here was their assignment description. Then this is one part they had to submit. This was the second part they had to submit. So it was actually a multi-week process. They would go back each week after they learned more material. They learned about assessments, and so they had to put types of assessments in there. They learned about strategies, and so they had to give strategies, and then they had to put up activities that could be used in a classroom. And so they did all of that, and then they shared that back and forth with one another. And so now all the students have access to the wiki with all those 5 components of reading, and they've got that wealth of information to go back. And then they have a key assessment where they have they have a case study, and they have to provide information about each component of reading. So they didn't have to do it for each component. They just have to go back to the resources that the other students provided for them. So that was one, when you have one wiki and everybody contributes. And then, like I mentioned, when I had the pathologies, each pathology was a different wiki. And so there was a group of people that talked about pathologies of the middle ear, and they created this whole numerous page wiki. And they did a variety of things. They put in pictures and videos to show, and this is just way richer than just a textbook. So those are the kinds of wikis that I've experienced and had good luck with. Whoops, what happened here? I just touched the mouse too much. Okay, wait, hold on. There we go. And then you can, as far as access to the wikis for other students, you can do it in any number of ways. You can make part of the wiki assignment be that they're going to actually formally present it to the rest of the class, whether it's I've done it asynchronous. We've had like a Adobe Connect or a Zoom meeting where they take turns sharing, or you can have it face-to-face, or you can have follow-up activities on the following the wiki, and I've done that in the form of discussion board prompts. So you can either have students make comments on each other's wikis and then ask more questions to follow up, or in another class, part of the group assignment was a different thing we used to make a timeline, and then I had them, so they each contributed, but then it was sort of a synthesis kind of project at the end where they had to take all the information and sort of group it into 3 different, what they would call time frames, and title time periods, and give them titles and explain significant events. Not so much like that, a date kind of thing, like that memorization. It was more like incorporating all the information. So those are the ways I've done that to follow up on the learning, to make sure they know it. And this was just examples of the prompts that I've had. So review the theory ThingLinks by a classmate. Which ones do you think make the most sense, and why? Which ones do you find to be least helpful, because there's not really one magic bullet in the theory kind of thing. And then this other one was about the timeline, where they had to do the groupings. And so these are just a couple of the ways that I've used different kinds of technology, and then even integrated them across each other, because the ThingLinks can be embedded in the wiki, just to see if you can get a little bit more engagement. And the feedback I've gotten from the students has been really good. So that's what I have for today. Any questions?
What kind of tool did you use for wikis?
The campus pack thing?
Okay.
Yeah.
So do they create individual pages, or everything's in one?
I did it both ways. So this one, I created. Probably I could go back here. This one I created. I put the whole assignment here.
So the description.
Yeah. So this was the assignment for everyone, and then they could go here and click on view, and then they would see which page they were going to do and who they were assigned to. But then in the other one, where they were each going to make their own, then I said group 1, group 2, and so each one had. But all of the students have access to all the wiki things, and then I just assigned privileges or like, what is it, editing rights or content creation rights or whatever it is. There's tabs in there to do that. It's really pretty intuitive. It's not that hard to do. I had Nadeem helped me when I was first making classes, and then Marianne after that. And once you have your instructional designer do it for you a couple of times, then you can go in there and kind of create them on your own. And I feel kind of confident doing that right now. And I've used them in my face-to-face classes. You know, that they started out being an online tool, and I found that just that student engagement, even though they're sitting right next to somebody, they don't always interact with that person until you like get them doing a group project. And then you can start it in the classroom, and you don't have to be tied. You have to take up classroom time, and it's not that they have to find time to meet. They can go, you know, students are up all hours of the night doing the work on it. So I just think there's some benefits into making that connection with the content and with the other students. And I found it to be pretty successful. I think it increases the depth of learning and the ability to maintain and remember it a little bit more. So, any other questions?
Yeah, what level class were you showing examples of?
This one here with the boots was a 200 level class, and the other ones were, some were 500, some were 700. So that's that, you know, that. So yeah, kind of the whole range. The 200 ones, we spend a time in class, and I actually have bring your computers, and I'm going to show you how to do this, and I walk them through it, you know. But the online ones, they managed. So.
Thank you, Michelle.
Second presentation. Yeah. Okay, sure. Second presentation will be by Dr. Elizabeth Crane, and she will demonstrate the use of journals in her online courses. Let me do this. And for online people, please just ask any questions publicly, and then I'm going to ask the presenter.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick comment. I use Wikis in my graduate level courses, and the students love them because it does give them that opportunity to work together to create projects or items that they can work as a group, and they don't all have to be online at the same time. I'm taking my glasses off because I can't see the computer screen with them on. So. I was asked to present about journals, and usually when we think about journals, we think about English classes. I don't teach English. I have never taught English, but journals are really a good way to talk about different things. Some traditional journals, when we think about them, is either a newspaper, a magazine, a daily record of personal events, a record of transactions, if you're talking accounting. Use in English classes, they focus on students and build skills, safe writing environment, to develop personal relationships. There's unexpected benefits because if a teacher's going back and reading through these, or professor's going back, it can tell you what you need to concentrate more on in classes, what they got, what they didn't get. English teachers use them to motivate students to write or to create better writing prompts. How I use journals goes a long way along those same lines. In both the EAD 811 and 812 classes, which talks about finance in schools, and then also teacher evaluation and induction programs. One of the things I used journals for was to have students identify their personal bias so that I could use this as a safe environment for them to be able to communicate just with the teacher. And I'll share some of the comments, but not actually in the classes, because one of the instructions I told them is this information was only between teacher and student. So there's no identifying information or anything else on some of these comments. They're very generic. It's a safe writing place. It helps you develop those personal relationships because then you start to understand where your students are coming from. And that's also an unexpected benefit because sometimes things come up and students kind of go, I never realized that before, on how they actually approach things. For student comments on journal use, I'm going to pull up this. Hopefully you can see it. Can you make this larger? Yes. Oh, there it is. Thank you. The prompt I gave them to start with was to reflect upon the biases they may have in analyzing data. I'd actually given them an assignment to go in on the web, and there's a website that they can take different tests that actually test their biases, to ask them to reflect on their personal beliefs. And some of the comments that you get from students are this one, a bias for achievement gap students that realized they spent more time concentrating on those students and did not provide the same opportunities to everyone else. Some over sexuality, over what's important in different grade levels. Some of it was the open eyes. They were reporting that they were open to biases they didn't know they had. To get them to think about, in their classrooms, providing students with from lower income families with more chances to get something done, and then that could actually be a disservice rather than helping the students out. Bias towards their own subject area, which if they're looking at school data and deciding what's important to focus on, that's something they really need to be aware of. They need to look across the school if they're going to be leaders, not just at one subject. This one came up a few times where students were saying they were surprised by the results of these tests and didn't agree with the results the test had. And that's a great time to bring into these discussions. Well, you really kind of need to do some soul searching, possibly retake the test or another one similar to it, because these tests are showing you what your biases are, even if you don't agree you have them. And that's always hard for students to hear. And these are graduate students.
One question. Is there a website or program that you use to create these?
They're actually created in Blackboard. And I'm going to show you that in just a couple of minutes. But there's a lot of them. You know, this one was talking about science, and when they're going through this, showing that this person actually, through the writing, has a definite bias towards males doing better in science. And this is an optimal time to point this out. If these people are going to be leaders, you don't want to be printing things out like this for public consumption, because it demonstrates that bias in there. I like this one. The biggest takeaway was that if you align your beliefs with the research you're doing, you're jeopardizing the validity of everything. And as they say to those in AA, the first step is admitting you have a problem, which I thought was awesome. And I don't expect journals to be perfect. I'm not going to grade these as if they were writing an essay, because I'm not asking them to write an essay. I'm asking them to do a reflection. So some of these, you're going to see a little bit of rambling in them, but that's okay.
You do grade them?
Yes. And I tell them, I actually grade the journals holistically. Did you address every part of that prompt? If you did, you get full credit. I'm not going to grade you on whether I agree with your statements or not. This is a time for you to reflect. Let me go in here and pull this up. I'm on a Blackboard here. Hold on, let me get into Blackboard real quick. And I'll show you how easy these are to create and how you can respond to them. Now, when I go in and I've created this journal, right here it tells them, just making sure it's showing up, it tells them there's a boundless open textbook that's online. There's Test Yourself for Hidden Biases that's online. This project implicit talks about how you identify what biases you have and what type of categories they fall into. So again, it gives them the prompt here, and then when they click on bias, it goes in and you see this has no entries. Well, if you click down here, I went in as a student and just created one just for fun, not serious at all. And when you have the student's journal entry here, you can comment on it to start a discussion, which I did here to show. So the student then can respond back to you, and it will show up in here. Or you can comment over here, just like any other assignment. And then that will show up as a grade balloon form. So there's actually two different ways you can go in and comment on these journals. When you go in to set the journals up, when you go to create journal, you just, well, let me go back a little further. I started a little too soon here. Let me go back to the modules. So if I wanted to add another module into, or another journal into this module, I can just go up here into Tools and click on Journals and create a link to a journal page. Now, if I want to create a new journal, I get different tools, but I can use the same journal. So if I'm having them report on, say, field work that they have to go out and do and report on, then I want to make comments on them, and I want them to keep going back to that same page. Every time they have a field work assignment, I can use this and use the same journal going all the way through. If I want to create a new journal, I can give it a name, type in the prompts that I want them to do, make it available. I can even limit the availability that you have to respond within these time frames. Allow them to edit, use it. If I want to grade it, I can put the grade in here, or no grading. You can also attach a rubric into the journal and create rubrics for them. So it's up to you how you want to use this. But this is a way of creating that private conversation in online classes between a teacher and a student that a lot of times is missing from that online environment. Other possibilities just for using journals is anytime you have a reflection, if you're having them read something or watch a video and you want them to reflect on what they saw, you can use a journal for that. And like I said, you can make it one journal throughout the whole class so that they see their progress themselves, or so that you can go in and view their progress as they're going through. Field work assignments, answering questions at the end, what did I learn? Having them think back and review the whole class. How do I feel about a subject? I teach math. This could be very important if you were teaching math online or science online. What are your feelings about this subject before you go in? So then you already know what kind of blocks you're dealing with. Or what concerns me most about this class topic, those types of things. If there's ethical problems, if like you're a nursing student and there's an ethical problem that the teacher wants to present to the students, but you don't want it out in public because you want students to really be honest and open, journals are a great place to do that. Because just the idea of a journal is associated with being a diary. So students kind of get that idea that this is sacred. It's not going to go out to general public. Somebody's not going to know Johnny said blah, blah, blah. Okay? I talk really fast. Yeah.
Because they are journals, rather than discussion boards or blogs even, I would suspect that the input would be greater. They would write more, in other words. Is that a true statement?
Yes, they do.
So how does that affect your grading time, though? Because that you're doing a bunch of students with a lot of text.
It doesn't affect it a whole lot. It depends really on how fast you read, because if you're looking at a journal, you're still going to be responding to what they say, just like you would if you were reading an essay. And depending on how you set them up, for me on this part, the way I've set them up in these two classes is really a reflection on what they've learned in the classes, and also for them to identify their biases. So it's just providing 2 or 3 sentences saying, hey, you really need to look at this. Or, you know, occasionally I'll have a student that just kind of misses the mark, and you need to say, well, you need to go back in and do a little bit more reflection or answer these questions. So you're not really spending a whole lot more time grading these, because you're not going to go through and tear them apart grammatically, for sentence structure, for vocabulary usage, unless you set it up that way. Now, if you're going to set it up that way, I would say just give the student a paper to write and submit, because then you can use the safe assign and everything and have a better idea if they're plagiarizing things. This is more just what they're feeling or how they're responding to certain topics. And it allows you to get those in-depth discussions going that you might get if a student came into your office, or if you had a small group of students in a classroom and one of them comes up to you after class or before class and starts talking. This allows those in-depth discussions online versus them just being out there and you have no clue who these people are that you're teaching.
I have a question. Do you have many students who are reluctant to complete these journal prompts?
No. I had 24 students in one class, and another teacher, because I'm an adjunct, ended up taking the second class, but he shared with me what they had, the class, so I could see what they were doing. And he had about 11, 12 students in there. And there wasn't a single student that did not fill it out, because part of it goes back to the prompt on here and setting it up in the prompt that if they're analyzing data or if they're looking at teacher evaluation or hiring new teachers, that these are going to be shared, and it's not in here, but it is in the actual assignment online, that these will be shared only between the teacher and student, that these are not going to become broad knowledge for the class. So I have not had any reluctance of students to do that.
Have you ever read something so good that you do want to share it with the class? And if you do it obviously anonymously?
I have read things that I think are so good that I would like to share them with the class. However, I don't. Because if I have told students, this is between you and me, I'm going to keep it between you and me. And then usually what I found, because I have a lot of discussion boards in my classes, because I don't think teachers and educators get enough time to talk. So this requires them to talk. That usually a lot of those same concepts will come up in the discussion boards, or they'll come up in the wikis, or they'll come up in the other assignments that everyone can see on there. I suppose I could ask a particular student, would you mind if I shared this anonymously with the class? But I would always make sure I got permission of that student first. Because you kind of have to build that trust within a class or that reputation when you're online that students know, because students find out. If you share things, students will find out. Which is why I made sure all of these were anonymous and not leaving any information in there that could actually identify any students. Just to share with you some of the others on reflections about the class. Again, here I gave them a very detailed prompt to think about these. This one actually said the journal entry was one of the most impactful things in the class. And that's one of the first things they did. Because it forced them to go back and reflect on it. So they can be very powerful. Some of it is just they're wondering about what could I do better? How can I help my school? Is these prompts are showing that they need to start building those things? And these are things that are coming out in journals because they're not, students don't think of journals as formal writing, but you can still see, and I know this is because they're graduate students and not freshmen, that the writing is still fairly good. But a journal also could be a place where you can work with those freshman students on writing to the standards that you expect for your class.
More questions? I don't have any questions. So that's it. Thank you, Dr. Crane. We got to conclude the session. Thank you both.
Thank you.
I have a question for you on the wiki, because I haven't really used that. Do you think that would be a good way to have, I've always thought about having sort of like a book discussion group or whatever. That's sort of what I was thinking when I was listening to the talk about the wiki, is could you set that up, like you wanting to have a class, do, a chapter by chapter sort of discussion where you had questions posed on the chapter.
I think that'd be a kind of cool way to do it, especially if you were going to assign like certain groups, like to certain chapters, and then they could like do a summary of it, and then you could have discussions in there. Because there's a spot for comments down below, so you click on that and see comments, and that can go back and forth in there. So that's an exchange piece in that Canvas pack one of the wikis. I think, if you just wanted to discuss, then maybe do discussion work. But if you really want to have some content there, then they can go back and review what happened in there. Because it's all in one place. I think it's maneuverable because the pages drop down like that. You can click from one page to the next and go back and review. I think it would work.
Actually, yes, you can. Because that's what this is. But they had to come up with alternative funding sources.
Oh, okay, so you did, yeah.
So I actually did that where each student had to talk about a national, state.
Is that a wiki or
That's a wiki.
That's a wiki that, yeah.
Yes.
Like you break them down into smaller groups so that, if you, say I want to focus on one chapter or, 3 chapters of a book, but you have to sort of pose as some questions for them, it seems like
Yeah, I mean, just like, or directions or something, yeah. but yeah, you could, and you can divide it and make it into as many pages as you want. You can just, it's just as easy as add a new page, that top tab. Yeah.
This is actually another class that I set up this way. That they have to work together to create a professional growth plan for a teacher.
Right, so that's sort of what I did.
So that's the same type of thing. Where they're going through on groups.
And they can all add some stuff, and then if you scroll down, you can see the viewer comments, so you can go in there.
And you can
see who's doing it as an instructor, and when they get it. But if they go to comments, then they can actually comment and ask you some questions. That's what that part there. So when they do it, I have they're supposed to post by a certain point in the week, and then they're supposed to go in there and then make comments to what their classmates, their group members posted. So it's like, well, did you? That was great. Can we add something more in this area? You know, they're supposed to, so that I know that they're looking at what it have contributed. Especially when you're telling them to put certain things in there, you know, make sure it's so.
Yeah, so you can do it both ways. The other one I did it is a whole class.
Right. So that's what I should.
Because that one, I wanted them to walk out of the class with alternate funding sources for public schools. This one, now we don't want.
Right.
25 people trying to create
Right.
one plan for one teacher.
But they can have access, so they can see somebody else's. They can't
Yeah.
write on it, but they can see everybody else's. And that's what I did in that audiology one. They can go see what the other resources are available. So I just think what I do for my students when they're getting ready to take the practice exam for their hard hearing, I open them, I have a group of students that are done with the class, but I opened it back up for them so they can study for the praxis test. It's like, that is all of those materials that are in there, that is the best way to study than to go back and try to read. Well, I don't know if kids take notes anymore, but I used to write, I used to take notes in class. But I mean, it's all right there, and so it's a perfect way for them to go back and review and study for those like licensure and certification exams. All the resources are right there, and they're so, you don't have to read textbooks or anything because they're not going to do that, right? So, yeah. And they all say that really helps. I've gotten feedback from them. That's really helpful that you put sources back up for me and that can just go back in and review material. So visual.
And students, even in the teacher evaluation, how